Well, hello, Eastwind family. Thank you for joining us online for our January series called You in 5 Years. It's a collection of talks about taking a look at the next 60 months and what could it look like? Who could we become? What does God have in store for us if we think thoughtfully and intentionally, and we take one step after another, taking a look at how we could live our best life. We say that around here, how we could be inspired to follow Jesus and deepen our faith and relationship with him. So it's a collection of talks over the entire month of January. We hope you'll join us for each one, that you'll put them all together because it's really one message. But we needed to give you a break in between, so we're going to do it over 5 weeks. Have a great day. It's great to be with you. I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you for joining us here at Eastwind today. My name is Dee Smith. I'm the Student Ministries Pastor, and I am stoked that you've decided to join us. My prayer for today is that our time together enriches your life and deepens your faith and relationship in Jesus. We're in the middle of a series called You in 5 Years. It's all about where your life is going and being intentional about who you're becoming. Carlos is going to be teaching us today about change and about how to make change even when you're not in the middle of a crisis. Before that, though, I have a couple of things that I want to share. If you have a junior high or a high school student, I'd love to engage them in our midweek, weekend, and camp experiences. You can find all the information for that under the Connect dropdown at eastwindcc.com. We're also getting ready to launch our life groups here at Eastwind, and my wife Haley and I are pumped about our life group and how that time together with others is going to grow our faith. We'd love for you to be part of a life group. You can find information about groups both online and in person, again at that Connect dropdown at our website. I'd love for you to hear a story, though, from an Eastwinder about how life groups has impacted and shaped their faith. Check this out.
Well, Aaron, I'm excited to have this conversation with you today. We've been doing these volunteer spotlights and looks at kind of the heart of Eastwind, and I had the privilege of being in a life group with you in the fall. It was a blast getting to know you and Barb, so I want to hear a little bit from you today. Why don't you introduce yourself first, though? There's going to be a lot of folks who don't know you, know the Coleman, so go ahead.
Sure. Well, thanks for having me today, Carlos. I appreciate it. My name's Aaron Coleman. I have attended Eastwind for probably 16 years now, I think going back to 2005. Wow, it seems like a long time ago, but I've got my wife, Barb. She's also attended that entire time. And then my son, Jackson, who's 19. He's a freshman at the U of I. And then my daughter, Kellyanne, who is a junior at Timberline High School. So myself, I'm a Boise native. Kind of grew up going to church in this valley, and this has just been a great home for us, for our family, and excited about everything we're doing now.
Yeah. I love that you've grown up going to church, because it's important for what we're going to talk about in just a minute here. We have, church, often people think of singing together and a message from a pastor and maybe serving the kids and doing some good in the city. But there's a part of your life in church, and how I got to know you was through something called small groups, or we call them life groups here, growing together through sharing life. And what I wanted to ask you was, why in your life as a Christian, following Jesus, why have life groups or small groups? Why is that community important? Why should anybody do it?
It's a good question. Life groups have been really important to me for a long time. I mean, my first life group was in high school, and I had a really strong group of guys that, quite honestly, they just cared for me. I could ask them questions. We wrestled through, especially back in high school, a lot of tough issues, trying to figure things out, what's right, what's wrong, what do we believe, what should we not believe in? And so that was kind of my basis of why life groups are so important to me. And then once I met Barb and we became married, and we did some life groups together. We did some separately. I know when Eastwind, I've been part of the men's group here for 11 years. Currently, we meet at 6:30 a.m. on a Friday morning. A lot of people think that's crazy, but we've kind of used that as a badge of honor now. But it's the life group has been so important to me just from an accountability standpoint. It's really helped me dive deeper into Scripture and wrestle with some issues that I might not otherwise deal with. It's been an opportunity for me to serve others, get to know others, be a part of their lives, a chance to pray for them. I know they're praying for me. So it's just been super impactful. I know this past life group that we had that I was a part of with you, that was a great experience. I got to meet a whole bunch of new people that I've never met before. And through the course, I think it was 8-9 weeks of doing that life group, just to again learn about these people's lives, learn from them. Hopefully I was able to contribute to them a little bit. But it was just an important part of our marriage. It was an important part of our experience together. I know come Tuesday nights, we were really excited to attend. So
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for sharing. I think it's important, people understand. They could hear me talk about life groups, but it's kind of my job. But to hear someone who chose on their own time to say, yes, we're going to do this, and use words like accountability, like service, support, all words that underpin how we grow, which is our desire here, that people would be inspired to follow Jesus and deepen their faith and relationship with him. And for those who don't know you, you're an active guy. You coach high school softball. Is that right? Coach high school softball. You love to hunt and be outdoors. We were just talking about skiing. You've got a great job, family, you're a busy dad, husband, friend. You've got all these things that look like a fully satisfied life. Why would anybody, let's go to follow Jesus. Why do you follow Jesus?
that's a good question too. For me, I think about the verse in John 10:10. It's one of my favorite verses. And Jesus is talking to a group of followers, and he says, "The enemy has come to steal and destroy, but I have come that you may have life and have it to the full." And that's why I follow Jesus, because I have found in my life, when I'm in sync with Jesus, when I'm really truly following Jesus, my life is full. In my relationships, in my heart, my mind, my soul, it's filled. And when I am not necessarily straying from Jesus, but not necessarily when I'm out of the Word, when I'm not paying attention like I should, I find that life isn't quite as full. And so I believe everything in Scriptures that's said about Jesus. He was who he said he was. He did what he said he did. And ultimately, he rose on the third day and saved me of my sins, the entire world of their sins, so that I one day get to be with God in heaven.
That just rolled right off your tongue, because I know you as someone who lives a full life, and you believe that. So thank you for sharing that, because that's what we're about. We're not just a community that does good. Jesus is at the center of everything Eastwind does, and life groups are a big part of that. So let's say you end up stuck on an elevator with somebody, and it's life group sign-up time, and they're like, "Yeah, life groups are dumb. They're a waste of time." What's your 15-second elevator pitch to them?
I would tell them, man, you should give it a shot. You'd be surprised at what you learn about others, surprised at what you learn about yourself. And if you truly want to get better and help others and be a real Christian, you really should consider being a part of a life group, because it'll change you in ways you didn't think.
Very cool. Aaron, thank you. Thanks for the forthrightness, the authenticity, for being part of Eastwind. 16 years. Fantastic. And for giving everybody watching today this invitation that now's the time to join a life group. Jump in. Let's do this. I'm so glad you got to hear from Aaron, because he captures really for us this bottom line and really what this collection of talks is about, this You in 5 years. What does it look like with you if you commit yourself to habits and ways of thinking and ways of living your life that bring about the best for you? And so we do hope that you will be in a life group, whether one of our virtual Zoom groups or in person, but that you'll consider that today. So we're going to continue in this series, You in 5 years, and it's just really asking a simple question. Who will you be 5 years from now? If you continue your present course, and then who do you want to be in 5 years? So these are two questions, but I'd like to believe that this series of talks can really apply to every area of your life, every motivation of your life, physically, intellectually, in relationships. But I also believe that there's a primary need, and this is kind of what my motivation is. There's this primary need for change that supersedes or precedes all others and deeply impacts how you and I will approach the next 5 years of our lives. I want you to hear a quote from Dallas Willard, who is the professor emeritus of philosophy at USC in Southern California until his death in 2013. And Willard's emphasis or specialty was actually, how does one grow in Christian living? Our mission here at Eastwind is we want to inspire you to follow Jesus. and to deepen your faith and relationship with him. And Willard was focused on understanding, what does that mean? How do you follow Jesus? How do you deepen your faith and relationship with him? So listen to this quote. Accordingly, the greatest need you and I have, the greatest need of collective humanity, is renovation of our heart. The spiritual place within us from which outlook, choices, and actions come has been formed by a world away from God. Now it must be transformed. So with that in mind, that our greatest collective need is the renovation of our heart. And over the next 5 years, we could see that action take place. We have to ask ourselves, where is our right now momentum taking us? And do we like that destination? And if we don't, friends, it is time to get off the bus. Choose a new route, cancel the flight. Like, it's time to go. I'm looking ahead and I can see where this is going. And it's not who I want to become. And that's why we're taking a step deeper than 12 months or New Year's resolutions, because I'm great at I'm great at making New Year's resolutions, and I'm on this kind of hamster wheel cycle of over my whole life. Start, stop, repeat. But I don't mean that in a good way, like gym tan laundry, repeat, like hit the gym, I mean start, stop, repeat, right back where I started. And part of it's because my vision or my sight is often too short. So last week, we talked sort of initially about this idea of how we jump into this, and the ways you let in are the ways you're set in. Or basically, the life we live is the life we make. And today's talk, if you want to write it down and jot it down during the day, it's just called In the Absence of Crisis. In the absence of crisis, and I'll tell you what I mean with that. But before I do, I asked a question about change on social media. I just said, why is it so hard to change? And I got so many great answers. I threw them in a word cloud. I'd love for you to take a minute and look at that. What words jump out at you? What words resonate with you? What do you see? Just look at it for a minute, and then we're going to jump right into this idea of in the absence of crisis. So for our title today, In the Absence of Crisis, we're going to jump into a story in the collection of writings in the Bible called the Old Testament. And it's going to be a story about prophets. And I just want to, share that this is a story, as we read it, I actually believe that this story happened, that the elements of it are true. But if that's a step for you, I don't want you to spend this time kind of going, I can't wrap my head around that. I just want you to lean into the characters and to hear what unfolds in the story that God has given us. This story about a prophet named Elijah. Now, what's fascinating about this story, it's got two characters. It's got a prophet, like a man of God or a person of God, who he performs these miracles and he advises kings. And this prophet Elijah ends up with like an apprentice or an assistant or a sidekick. But here's the thing, the sidekick's name is Elisha. And like this to me is like one of the greatest mysteries of the Bible. If I'm God and I'm going to this influential story is going to take place and these characters are going to be on a scene of history, and one's name is Elijah, I'm not going to name the other one Elisha. I'm going to name the other one like Billy Bob or Steve or something that's really, really different. So when I tell the story today and I'm like, Elijah did this and then Billy Bob did this, and you're like, oh, right, I have no idea why I'm going with Billy Bob on this one. But I get this. If your name's Billy Bob, I hope you feel really honored and valued today in this conversation. But you're going to keep hearing Elisha, Elijah, Elijah, Elisha. And, maybe God just was like, oh, this is going to be a blast. I'm just going to give them these two names that are so close together. And then all these years later, they're going to be trying to talk about it. So let's jump in. We're going to actually be in a book about the history of Israel called 1 Kings. I want you to hear the story. I'm just going to read it for you, and it sets the stage for this next leg of our conversation about you in 5 years. You in 5 years. So it begins with this. So Elijah went from there So it's picking up in Elijah's life. Elijah went from there and found Elisha, son of Shaphat. Now, I'm so thankful because some of you right away were like, I'm not listening to another word of this message unless I know who his dad is. So generously, the Bible goes, Elisha, son of Shaphat. We know we have a little like family history and lineage, and that's going to be important because let's look what Elisha was doing. He was plowing with 12 yoke of oxen, and he himself was driving the 12th pair. You've got to understand, 12 yoke of oxen is a big deal. This is kind of a sign that Elisha is next in line for like Shaphat Farms. Elisha, see, here we go, Elijah, Billy Bob. Elisha is next in line for this lineage of this really successful family land and family farm. And oxen, because we don't use them a lot, but if I was like talking with another farmer and he said, oh, how's your farm going? I'm like, it's really good. I just got 12 new combines. Like, that's a lot of investment. That's a lot of money, but that helps things work. That's what ox were like. And you got 12 sets of them. You are set and you are doing well. So it gives us this framework. Elijah shows up and there's Elisha on Shaphat Farms, the heir to the throne. He's ready to take over the family business and he's working the fields with all this expensive farm machinery or animalry that he has. And then listen to what happens. Elijah went up to him and threw his cloak around him. And I love this part of the story because it's just this image of like, you've got Elisha like in the field. He's riding one of these sets of oxen and they're plowing the fields and they're making money and this is a good thing. And then this like man of renown, this person of reputation kind of comes in. It just says he puts his coat on him. And I love that idea. I'm like, how that happened was Elisha's out there and Elijah just comes up and is like, whew, and gets him. And what does Elijah like throw a punch? He's like, who snuck up on me? Or is he like, hey, thanks, man, but I really wasn't that cold. Like what unfolds in this scene? This can be really important. Hold that image and that idea of this cloak because it's this placing of a coat on him as a significant invitation. Well, an invitation to what? Look what happens. Elisha then left his oxen and ran after Elijah. Let me kiss my father and mother goodbye, he said. Then I will come with you. Go back, Elijah replied. What have I done to you? So Elisha left him and went back. He took his yoke of oxen and slaughtered them. He burned the plowing equipment to cook the meat, and he gave it to the people, and they all ate. And then he set out to follow Elijah, and he became his servant. So in Act 1 of this story of these two men in this, what we find is he's all in. It starts with him on his farm, with all of his combines and John Deeres and his success. And Shaphat Farms is going somewhere under Elisha. And then Elijah, the prophet, comes and invites him to follow him to be his apprentice. And there's this incredible scene where he takes all of this value in these ox and he slaughters them, and then they take the equipment, the yoke and everything that hooks them together, and they start a fire and they cook all these oxen up, and they just have a huge party. He is all in. So we see the stage set for the next few years of Elisha's life. There's no going back to Shaphat Farms. There's no going back to the life he had, the luxury he had, the wealth he had, the notoriety he had. Now we're going to jump ahead a handful of years and let's see what happens with these two. And this is going to be the story that shapes our learnings today. 2 Kings now, chapter 2. So still a story in the history of the people of Israel. 2 Kings chapter 2, starting in verse 9. When they had crossed the river Jordan, Elijah said to Elisha, tell me, what can I do for you before I am taken from you? Let me inherit a double portion of your spirit, Elisha replied. And I love that because here's the scene that unfolded just before that. That same coat that Elijah put on Elisha, that same coat, they come to the Jordan River. It's this big river and they're trying to think about how to cross it. And you watch Elijah the prophet takes his cloak off and he slams it on the ground. And as it hits the ground, it lays there and the waters of the Jordan separate. There's now a path to walk through. This is wild stuff. And Elijah and Elisha walk through. This is a miracle that was just performed. One of Jewish history would say 8 miracles that Elijah performed. Give or take a few, there's some disagreement, but 8 miracles. And what happens is Elijah says, I'm about to go. I'm about to go. Things are about to change for you, Elisha. what do you want? Elisha says, well, you've done 8 miracles. I want to do 16. And the audacity of that, the forward leaning to say everything we've done, everything I've seen you do, I want to do all that and I want to double it. He says, I want a double portion of your spirit. Well, you have asked a difficult thing, Elijah says. Yet if you see me when I'm taken from you, it will be yours. Otherwise, it will not. I just love this line because, like, if you see me, imagine if you're Elisha now. You're like, wait, so if you're taken from me and I miss it, I get nothing. And so for the next, like the rest of the time, it's just like everywhere he goes, eyes open, like he's someone comes up like, hey, Elisha, how's it going? I can't talk to you right now. Like, I just got to keep my eyes on Elijah. And then this happens. As they were walking together and talking together, suddenly a chariot of fire and horses of fire appeared and separated the two of them. And Elijah went up to heaven in a whirlwind. You can't come up with a weirder story. And that's one of the fascinating things about this. This is in the Bible. It's a story worth considering. And I know if I was like trying to build or frape or shame a way of thinking, I would leave stuff like this out because it's so crazy you can't even make it up. Flaming horses, flaming chariots. I have no framework for that. But they show up, they come from the sky to pick up Elijah, to take him away, to be with God. No more wrestling and toiling and fighting and striving on this life, on this earth, wrestling under the weight of sin and the brokenness of this world. He is invited to be taken up. Interestingly enough, he actually is one of 2 people in Scripture who skips death itself. That's a story for another time. But as we see this flaming chariot, wouldn't that be a great way to go too? Like, go ahead, just if you plan out how you want to go without like boots on. I want to go out with flaming horses coming from the sky, with a flaming chariot that just takes me away. How legendary would that be? And here's what happens. Elisha saw this and he cried out, my father, the chariots and horsemen of Israel. And Elisha saw him no more. And then he took hold of his garment. He tore it in two. Elisha then picked up Elijah's cloak that had fallen from him and went back and stood on the bank of the Jordan. So there's the moment. Elijah's taken away. Elisha sees it. He has this promise of this double portion of everything that Elijah did. And then all of a sudden, that very cloak like floats down out of the sky and kind of lands on the ground. And I kind of picture Elisha being like he picks it up and he kind of puts it on. And even in his grief and his sorrow because his mentor and his friend is gone, he's ready for the change that's about to come. Because listen to how our story concludes today. He took the cloak that had fallen from Elijah and he struck the water with it. Where now is the Lord, the God of Elijah, he asked. When he struck the water, it divided to the right and the left, and he crossed over. What happens here? What happens is the very first thing that Elisha does as he steps out in this new world, this new life coming out of this crisis, the very first thing he does is the very last thing Elijah did. He steps right into, I am going to live into the promise that I was given. Throws down that same cloak. Jordan River splits in two, and his story begins. And the story of the Bible tells us that Elisha performed twice as many miracles as Elijah. You know, in the absence of crisis, that's the conversation we're in today. And I think there's 3 really powerful principles in this story we can see, because it's not a story filled with crisis. It's a story of time passing, of capturing that time, of moving forward. And it's interesting because change is hard. You looked at that word cloud, and like if change was easy, we wouldn't have books upon books about it, and self-help and support and mentoring and all the things we go about. We wouldn't be constantly resetting our New Year's resolutions. And change is hard, but we all know we can change. Now think about this. If you have ever been in a crisis, you have successfully handled change. I believe that about you. I mean, on the extreme scale, this is like the story that's like, mom lifts minivan off child. Like somehow in that crisis, in that moment where she had to save her child, she just got this superhuman strength and every fiber of her muscles fired. She lifted the minivan and saved the day. Like that, in crisis, we are capable of incredible things. Incredible. So what do we do, though, when we're not in crisis? Like acute crisis that requires change. What do we do? In my life, when I've been hit with uncertainty, or especially things related to my kids, that's when I find all of a sudden I'm trusting God. I'm leaning on God. I'm listening to God. I'm daily with him because I'm in crisis. I develop all the habits and patterns that I think are so important to a life of following Jesus. They just start to come to me. But then when things are pretty good, I lean into some other habits, not ones that grow my spirit and grow my heart and help me understand what it means to follow Jesus. I think that we have to come to a place where we can generate internal crisis, even if we don't have I'm going to call it the luxury of external crisis. And I don't mean like setting it up so somebody, grabs our kids every day and we have to chase them down and rip the door off the car and like that's our fitness program. I mean, well, listen to I'm putting in the words of Tony Robbins, who speaks to, of course, millions of people about change over my lifetime. But Tony Robbins says, change happens when the pain of staying the same is greater than the pain of change. So change hurts, and that's why we don't like it. I think of different things because prayer is complicated and can feel difficult and doesn't seem like a good use of our time, and I don't lean into it. I don't do it. I'm not good at it. I'm not good at silence if I was to think about something related to my spiritual journey. So what do I do if there's not a crisis? Do I generate it? No, I don't generate it. Instead, I look at how Elisha and Elijah operated, and the three things that we're going to learn from them, three movements. We're going to go pretty quickly through these movements. So here's the first movement. The absence of crisis requires drastic action. This is the burn the ships moment. Cortez, for all the evil he perpetuated through his time in history as an explorer, Cortez is known for this idea of burning the ships. He stood on the shore of new unexplored lands with his men, and they put the ships off the shore and they burned them. He, in effect, said, this change is going to happen. In the absence of crisis, it requires drastic action. So the first thing we're going to do is take drastic action to get from where we are to where we want to be. And Elisha demonstrates this right at the outset of the story. He's invited to follow Elijah. What does he do? He slaughters the ox, burns the wood, has a feast, feeds all the farm labor and helpers, feeds everybody. Now he's done. He has no choice but to set out on this journey. That's like full on burn the ships. Drastic action. Okay, way less dramatic, but like in my marriage, I've been married 22 years. And Emily and I met in college, and she and I were both at the same college basketball game, and I was right down behind the bench of the other team, and I was just like yelling and interacting with them and everything they did, and it got so intense that eventually one of the players on the other team like got up and started coming to have a conversation with me, and I'm yelling even louder, and my friends are yelling, and we're in this guy's head, and we're like winning at life. And then after the game, I'm in the hallway. We won the game. Adrenaline's up. My school spirit's high. And Emily goes, that was really ugly. I said, oh yeah, that other team, they were really ugly. She goes, no, you were really ugly. And I was like, what? She goes, I watched you. I didn't even know who you were. You were like so aggressive towards that guy, and you were just tearing him down. And like, I've never seen you like that before. Now I because I'm like gentle and humble and have no pride, I said, oh, that's just basketball. You don't understand. And this is probably not a direct quote, but I remember Emily saying, that's okay. Because if that's who you're going to be, I don't want to be with you. And that was a burn the ships moment for me. I loved basketball. I didn't play at that time, so I just loved like the intensity of being engaged as a fan in that way. And it like in a split second, I went, oh, that ship's gonna burn. I will cheer the other team on if that's what it takes for me to spend my life with this girl. Emily wasn't being demanding. She just saw something in me that was ugly. And I wrote it off as, it's just what we do. And she said, fine, then do that. But not with me. And I burned the ships. Sir Isaac Newton, of course, famous for the discovery behind gravity and everything. He gave us a theory, the kind of these laws of motion. And I just want to bring one back up for us to think about. Sir Isaac Newton's first law of motion, or what's called inertia, states the following. that an object will remain at rest or in uniform motion in a straight line unless compelled to change its state by the action of an external force. We will keep where we are or keep heading where we're heading unless there's an external force, drastic action. The point is, everything in the universe wants to keep doing whatever it's doing. It doesn't want to change. We're all resistant to a change of state. And that's called inertia. It's true in physics, but I think it's also true in us. It's true in humanity. Everything in the universe, every object, everything, the first law of motion states it's stuck in a pattern. It makes so much sense. And our default thing is to stay where we are. Our default thing is to not move, to not change, because the first law states that, and actually inertia the word's drawn from the Latin for the word lazy. So everything's lazy, everything's idle, it's just stuck. It's just stuck. And that's why it's so difficult to change your life. Because all the normal energy that you apply to change, and we've done that. I imagine if you're like me, you've put a ton of energy into good change in your life. You pour it in. But all that energy is just spent overcoming inertia, just barely overcoming this state of being stuck. And we're not able to build up any speed. And so drastic action becomes that first movement we have to do. It's burning the ox, it's burning the yokes, it's burning the equipment, it's throwing the party, and it's following Elijah. It's burning the ships. It's deciding right there, right now, I will never do that again, because the consequence of that cheering the way I did is going to affect the consequence of this relationship that means so much to me. It's drastic to say, here's a line. No more. The time for half measures is over. To change your environment. Let's make this really practical. You're struggling with healthy eating, and this is an ongoing battle, but have you ever gone through your house, taken everything that's not good for you, stomped on it, thrown it in the garbage, and said, every time that comes through my house, I'm going to do that? I have no idea if that's a good idea or if that's even a recommended plan, but it's drastic. It's not a half measure. It says, I'm not going to just try to avoid that food. I'm going to get it completely out of my life. I'm going to change the way I drive home so I always drive by my gym. I'm going to stop walking in the house and letting out my exhaustion from being gone all day. I'm going to connect with my roommates or with my spouse or my kids, and I'm going to look right at them. I'm going to start up one more time. How was your day? Tell me about it. What can I do for you? The time for half measures is over. That's what drastic action means. That's what we do in the absence of crisis. Otherwise, 5 years from now, you're just an older version of who you are right now, but exaggerated. So here's a question for you. It's a big one. What drastic action is needed in your life at this very moment? That's what we want to be about. We want to be together in community, you individually and us collectively as a community, whether online or whether in person, that we help each other in our drastic action. One of the most drastic steps you could ever take is trusting Jesus with your life. Now hold that thought. We're going to come back to it in a minute. Because the second thing that that the absence of crisis requires is steady progression. So steady progression is like slow and steady, slow and steady. Here's the deal. From the time he followed Elijah to the time Elijah was taken away, that was 4 to 6 years. What was Elisha doing during that time? The good news is the Bible tells us. Listen to this. It's a little later in the story, 2 Kings chapter 3. But Jehoshaphat asked, "Is there no prophet of the Lord here through whom we may inquire of the Lord?" And an officer of the king of Israel answered, "Yes, Elisha, son of Shaphat, is here. He used to pour water on the hands of Elijah." Pouring water, that's all we know about a 4 to 6 year period. Pouring water. So basically, he was like the hand sanitizer station. We can all resonate with that right now. Like everywhere they went, Elijah would be like, "All right, it's game time. Elisha." Put his hands out and Elisha would be like, "All right." Pour the water on her, like, and that's a great ASMR sound, I bet. Like, I don't know how to do that, but he'd get all excited. He'd pour the hand sanitizer, it was water, not hand sanitizer, would pour the water. In 4 to 6 years, that's all we know. It doesn't say, "Oh yeah, Elijah was doing miracles," and Elisha was like doing sub-miracles or minor miracles. Or like Elijah would do 9/10 of the miracle and then say, "All right, apprentice, come in here, do the rest." None of that. 4 to 6 years. Just pouring water on Elijah's hands. Slow, steady progression. Our whole series of talks is about a 5-year period, so I love the timing of that. That for 5 years, Elisha just steadily did what was needed of him to create the stage, to set the place, to bring his heart to a place where he could step into what God had for him, where he could embody and grab hold of his dreams. Because if drastic action tips over the first domino, then what do we need? Just consistent. It may not look like much has happened, but just be consistent. Pour water, not for a week, not for a month, not for 12 months, 60 months. Pour water. I want to go way back to a Greek philosopher. Listen to these words. "No great thing is created suddenly, any more than a bunch of grapes or a fig. If you tell me that you desire a fig, I answer you, there must be time. Let it first blossom, then bear fruit, then ripen." See, whatever change you want that's dramatic and sudden and instant, if it's instantly visible, then it's not long-term change. It's not sustainable. Slow and steady. Pour water. I want to modernize this a little bit. The great book is called The Compound Effect by Darren Hardy. Listen to what Darren Hardy says about this principle of slow and steady. It's time someone told it to you straight. You've been bamboozled for too long. There's no magic bullet, no secret formula or quick fix. You don't make 200 grand a year spending 2 hours a day on the internet, or lose 30 pounds in a week and rub 20 years off your face with a cream, fix your love life with a pill, or find lasting success with any other scheme that is too good to be true. It would be great if you could buy your success, your fame, your self-esteem, good relationships, and health and well-being in nicely clamshelled packages at the local Walmart. But that's not how it works. This is how it works, is to take it day in and day out, keep sowing, keep watering, keep dreaming, keep planning, keep sowing, keep watering, keep dreaming, keep planning. About Eastwind and our 5 pillars, keep in small groups, keep in the Bible, keep in Sunday experiences, keep serving in the walls of Eastwind, keep serving out of the walls of Eastwind, keep loving, keep growing, keep pursuing authenticity, keep in your life groups, keep like it's just slow and steady, and you will see the growth that you're looking for. Leadership coach John Maxwell puts it this way: improvement doesn't happen in a day, but it must be daily. It's not going to happen in a day, and you can't be changed by tomorrow, but it will happen daily. And if you do slow, steady, repeated, consistent actions daily, you'll get where you want to be. Now let's close with the third thing we learned from Elisha. It's just that the absence of crisis requires a direction outside of yourself. It requires a true north. What's the first thing Elisha does when Elijah's taken away and he's in this grief in this moment and he receives Elisha's cloak? He goes back and he does exactly what he saw Elijah do. His true north, his coach, his guide, his mentor. That's why we want you to follow Jesus, to deepen your faith and relationship with him. We see this story in the New Testament, this guy named Zacchaeus. Zacchaeus is kind of a wreck. He's got money, but his relationships are broken, and he meets Jesus. And the story of the Bible tells us almost instantaneously, Zacchaeus and Luke have a party. And that party, Zacchaeus stands up and says, I have met Jesus. I have watched his life. He has looked at me and treated me with love, and I'm done with the ways that I've done things. Not only am I done, I'm going to become the reciprocal or even something opposite from that. Because when you encounter Jesus, you get this new true north. You look at his actions. That's why we value the gospel so much. The biographies of Jesus, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. In the absence of crisis requires a direction. That almost sounded like the absence of Christmas. No, I'm not saying that. The absence of crisis requires direction outside of yourself, a true north. Friends, that's what we want for you. That's what this series is about. You can find that direction in Jesus. That drastic action can be taking a step to say yes to Jesus. And maybe you don't know how to do that, so it's like jump in a life group. Just keep coming back Sunday after Sunday. Start reading Matthew, Mark, Luke, or John if you need somewhere to start, or read them again. But the absence of crisis is not a problem because we've been shown a way forward. I hope you enjoyed the story of Elijah and Elisha and how they can teach us how we can take and move out of this place of inertia to perpetual ongoing movement and momentum. And then next week, we're going to pick it up and we're going to keep exploring this kind of one talk broken down into 5 parts. Thanks for being here today. Hey, thanks for being with me today. I'm so glad we could join together. And we're going to keep this conversation going. If you missed last week, go back and grab it so you can kind of see how these threads pull together. You in 5 years, get a piece of paper out when you're done here. Write it down. Who do you want to be in 5 years? Go deep, not just your bank account, not just your waistline, not just the car you drive, not just your home, moving from renting to buying, but go to that place that Dallas Willard started. Go to your soul, your heart. Where do you want your heart to be in 5 years? You won't regret it. And we're here to walk this road with you. So next week, we'll pick this journey back up. Make sure you visit eastwindcc.com, see how you can get involved in a life group, one of those steady, consistent actions. For some of you, a drastic measure. Or maybe today you said, I want to know Jesus. I'm ready for that drastic measure. Make sure you visit our connection card and let us know so we can reach out to you. Thanks for being here. I'm going to end with a benediction, some words we say every time we gather. I just want you to hear them. May you jump into the arms of Jesus, and may he push you out into the world. And may you be healed as you participate in the healing of others. Not because you must, but because you may. This is why we were born. Have a great week, everybody. We'll see you next week.